pocket blinds, photographs shaking under my cold hands. Your frozen smile still cuts through this room. Quiet dust dancing where our laughter lived. I waited for something loud to break us, but every stitch unraveled without a sound. We slipped away without a word. That was the heaviest silence. Night rain fell but nothing answered. We slipped away without a word. Mornings used to bloom in chipped white cups, slow talk drifting like steam between us. Then your eyes learned that distant winter. Every pause grew longer than our days. I should have spoken when your voice trembled. I would have held you longer in that doorway. We slipped away without a word. That was the heaviest silence. Rooms grew colder than the street outside. We slipped away without a word. Sat across from me in night rain, unreturned questions hanging between our breaths. No one said stay, no one said go, just your shadow leaving the empty doorway. My fault lives in everything I never asked. Every goodbye I kept inside my mouth. Now time folds thin days into the same gray evening. I trace your face on glass fog, trembling breath. The city moves on indifferent to this quiet crater. I live beside your absence like a patient ghost. We slipped away without a word. That was the heaviest silence of all. If I had spoken, would you have stayed breathing near? I would have held you longer in that fading light. Empty doorways echo with what I never said. I waited, you didn't come back, and the silence answered. Some love dies softly and leave the loudest quiet.
Fading light on the pier, cold hands in pockets, water holding broken skies, everything muted and slow. I watch the horizon Without hope or questions, our love slipped away like a forgotten melody. Quiet rooms where our voices used to wander, now only trembling breath and unfinished sentences. We never said goodbye, and that was the hardest part. Empty doorways waited for words that never started. I waited in the silence, you just drifted past. Two shadows untying themselves without a sound. Retrace small moments, dull but once warm. Your laughing eyes across the room feel distant. Photographs shaking in my hands, edges bending. Our dreams now echoes in a hollow future. You were near me, somehow out of whispered around the truth, afraid to touch it. We never said goodbye, and that was the hardest part. Night rain on the window, washing out our names. Unreturned calls ringing through my quiet chest. We left without leaving, we broke without breaking. I stood outside your door, heart heavy and silent. Fading light behind your curtains matched my own. If I had spoken, would your eyes have stayed? I would have held you longer against the ending. Instead I lingered like a ghost in your doorway. You packed your small bag slowly, erasing years in minutes. Our eyes met once, cold recognition without rescue. No final scene, just the soft shuffle of leaving. Love unraveled between us, thread by quiet thread. We never said goodbye, and that was the hardest part. Those words still haunt the corners of my quiet rooms. I waited in the hallway, you folded up our lives. If I had spoken, maybe time would have been for us. Now every fading light reminds me I stayed silent. Too late to call you back from that doorway. Some stories dissolve quietly, and I carry this one.
Night rain on the glass of this dim cafe. Your chair stays empty in the corner shadow. My cold hands trace circles through fading light. I taste old coffee and unspoken promises drowning. Every quiet morning we had feels borrowed now. Like someone else's life I watched too softly. We broke in silence, the cruelest goodbye. No slam doors, no final angry word, just quiet rooms and unreturned calls. We broke in silence, the cruelest goodbye. Your eyes stopped landing, they slipped right through me. Your laughter sounded hollow, rehearsed for strangers. My phone lit up with nothing from you. Each unreturned call cut one more fragile thread. I didn't ask you why you disappeared slowly. I feared your answer more than your absence. We broke in silence, the cruelest goodbye. No last confession beneath the night rain, only photographs shaking in my trembling breath. We broke in silence, the cruelest goodbye. I walked that street where we first felt endless. Your message burned colder than the winter air. It's over blinking, a period without a reason. I swallowed every question, let my throat close. If I had spoken, would you have turned around? Days bled into nights inside these quiet rooms without mercy. I search our echoes like pages torn from a book. People say move on but give no directions home. We became strangers sharing dust on the same photographs. We broke in silence, the cruelest goodbye. No last page to turn, just a blank margin. I waited, you didn't come back. My fault somehow. If I had spoken, I would have held you longer. Now cold hands hold nothing but this fading light. We broke in silence, the cruelest goodbye. I wrapped the silence around me and finally let go.
Fading light crawls across this warm wooden floor. Your empty chair waits, phasing nothing, saying nothing. Cold hands resting quiet on my useless knees. I count the hours since your last trembling breath. I waited all night, you didn't come back. Every unreturned call hangs like dust in here. She left without a word, and the silence became the loudest goodbye. Photographs shaking in my tired hands tonight. I whisper what I should have said then. Mornings taste like stale coffee and night rain. Half-played songs linger, cut off in the middle. The doorway stays clean, no shadow, no suitcase. I talk to the air, it never answers. If I had spoken, would you have turned around? Or were you already gone, just forgetting to leave? She left without a word, and the silence became the loudest goodbye. I rehearsed lost sentences in quiet room. Every missed heartbeat echoes down this hallway. There was no fight, just distance growing quietly. No slammed doors, only empty doorways and fading light. Our love unraveled like thread, soft and patient. Too late to ask where the first tear started. Too late to learn how to hold you longer. I stand by the door, hand hovering over the lock. No message waits, only the blue glow of nothing. I almost dial your number, then swallow your name. My fault lives in everything I never let you hear. She left without a word, and the silence became the loudest goodbye. Night rain taps softly, counting everything I never confessed. If I had spoken, I would have held you longer. Now quiet rooms cradle this small, aching peace. I live with your absence like a slow fading light. In the hush after us, your whisper never answered. Gray water carries the overcast sky away. I sit at the pier edge, cold hands folded. Your old laughter flickers across the waves. The space beside me stays untouched and waiting. Every quiet ripple Sounds like words unsaid. I breathe in silence, but it never answers. You never said goodbye, you just disappeared. An empty doorway where your shadow used to rest. You never said goodbye, you just disappeared. I keep calling your absence by your name. Our last words were whispers in crowded rooms, careful phrases dodging what we were breaking. Unreturned calls hung like ghosts between days. Your eyes slipped past me, chasing distant windows. If I had spoken, would you have stayed? Only left slower, fading in softer light. You never said goodbye, you just disappeared. Plans fell silent, photographs shaking in my hands. You never said goodbye, you just disappeared. I trace every nothing like it might explain. Night rain follows me down familiar foreign streets. I wait outside memories like locked apartment doors. Trembling breath, counting steps you will not take. I would have held you longer, I never held you right. Some stories drown quietly beneath the smallest waves. I learned to walk through quiet rooms without expecting you. The fading light feels honest, softer than your distance. My fault lies mostly in the words I buried. I waited, you didn't come back, that is our ending. You never said goodbye, you just disappeared from everything I was. Empty doorways echo with the weight of honest questions. You never said goodbye, you just disappeared into ordinary days. I hold that silence like a letter never written. You never said goodbye, you just disappeared. Still I keep waiting for a farewell that lives only in my imagination. Some goodbyes stay unspoken and still break everything quietly. Fading light on the edge of the pier. Empty doorway of water and night rain. We once whispered here through the fog. Now only cold hands on my knees. I waited where your laughter used to linger. quiet rooms inside me grew larger. We never said goodbye, but the silence said it all. Photographs shaking in my unsteady hands, your shadow gone from every distant window. I called your name inside, no answer at all. Unreturned calls stacked like unopened letters, unread messages sleeping in a bright screen. Your hand once slipped slowly away from mine. My fault was believing pauses weren't endings. If I had spoken when your eyes turned away, maybe night rain wouldn't sound as hollow. We never said goodbye, but the silence said it all. Streetlights blur like the future we abandoned. I trace your name on fog glass alone. I waited for a storm, nothing fell at all. Outside your dark window, I swallowed every question, trembling breath caught between knocking and turning away. I whispered a goodbye, the wind barely carried. No door slammed, just a slow unraveling sky. Sometimes love ends like a movie without credits. I walk those old streets, they feel like empty stages now. Every corner holds a version of us still laughing. I reach for ghosts where your shoulder used to rest. I finally see the damage of every unsaid word. We never said goodbye, but the silence said it all. I would have held you longer, fought the fading light. If I had spoken, maybe your hand stayed warm. Now night rain rides are ending on the sidewalks. I waited, you didn't come back. I still listen for one last word to break this endless quiet. I step into the dark, carrying your unfinished echo. Night rain gathers on this worn-out bench. Amber streetlight paints my trembling breath. Your window's dark like you erased my name. Quiet rooms across the street remember us. I waited outside that empty doorway, hoping silence would finally speak for us. You left without a single breaking sound. No slammed doors, no sharpened words thrown. You left without a single breaking sound. Sometimes the loudest heartbreak is never heard. You used to hum soft while water boiled, cold hands brushing mine like a quiet promise. Now unreturned calls hang like ghosts between us, photographs shaking when the night train passes. If I had spoken, would you have stayed? I would have held you longer than this silence. You left without a single breaking sound. No goodbye written in the hallway, yeah. You left without a single breaking sound. Sometimes the loudest heartbreak is never heard. I trace your shadow in the fading light. Every almost sentence still stuck in my mouth. My fault lingers where your footsteps disappear. Love unravels softly, too late to feel it tear. I see your distant eyes in every passing window, like you were already gone while sitting beside me. We broke in whispers no one else could notice. Our last thread snapped inside a closed, quiet door. You left without a single breaking sound. Just a door closing slow on all our echoes. You left without a single breaking sound. I hear it louder now in these quiet rooms. You left without a single breaking sound. Sometimes the loudest heartbreak is never heard. I walk away softly, carrying the noise of nothing. Quiet room, the city hums behind the glass. Photograph shaking slightly in my tired hands. Your smile is trapped inside that frozen frame. Cold hands resting where your coffee cup once waited. I waited for the fight that never came. Only fading light answered every unreturned call. We left each other in the quiet, where love dies without a sound. I called your name into the silence, but the silence swallowed every word. until the night rain stopped. Now empty doorways echo with your missing shoes. You sat beside me, I somewhere else. Your short replies drifted out like distant static. I kept rehearsing words I never said. If I had spoken, would you have stayed? We left each other in the quiet, where love dies without a sound. I reached for you across that shrinking distance, but the space between us never answered. You slipped away before the morning found my face. A folded note sleeping inside our favorite book. No accusation, only soft admission of something broken. My trembling breath stained the margins you once underlined. I would have held you longer if I'd known we were already ghosts inside our own story. Now I walk our old streets, counting every missing shadow. Your laughter's outline hangs above each familiar doorway. I check my phone for a message you won't send. My fault tastes like metal on my tongue tonight. We left each other in the quiet, where love dies without a sound. I waited in that room for one last sentence, but your empty side of the bed stayed cold. If I had spoken, maybe time would bend. Now silence is the only thing that knows us. I turn the picture face down and let you go.
Gray sky presses down on the harbor's fading light. Cold hands on the rail, trembling breath in the wind. Your chair this morning empty beside my untouched coffee. Love didn't break, it just folded into silence. I watched your smile, thin like mist on water. I kept my questions quiet, hoping you would stay. Some love dissolve in the quiet that follows. No slammed doors, just unreturned calls and night rain. I reached for you, only caught the cold air. Some loves dissolve in the quiet that follows.
used to laugh like the world was our secret. Now quiet rooms echo with what we never said. Your eyes stopped searching, mine drifted past my shoulder. I waited for a storm, but nothing ever came. I traced small gestures, photographs shaking in my hands. If I had spoken, would you have stayed? Some love dissolve in the quiet that follows. Street lamps flickered your breath, hanging in the dark. We stepped into that cab, left the doorway wordless. Some loves dissolve in the quiet that follows. I walked through empty doorways, counting what was missing. Your coffee mug waiting, stained with fading mornings. Unreturned calls blinking like distant winter constellations. I held my tongue, thinking silence meant we were safe. Now every quiet second feels like my fault. I see it now, the slow leak in every tender moment. How I mistook your fragile distance for simple tired days. You left without a sentence, I answered with nothing. I would have held you longer if I'd known how. Some love dissolve in the quiet that follows. Not in fire, just in soft unanswered evenings. I waited at the pier, you didn't come back. My fault lives here, breathing in each fading light. I reach for you nightly, only catching cold air. Some loves dissolve in the quiet that follows. I walk away with your silence, living inside me.
Midnight fog hangs low on empty sidewalks. Street lamps blur like halos in the haze. Cold hands buried deep inside this coat. Trembling breath curls upward then disappears. We never fought, we only stopped speaking. Our fading light died without a sound. We loved in silence, we left in silence. No last words, just a closing door. Your unreturned calls echo in my chest. We loved in silence, we left in silence. I still rewrite the ending in my head. Sharp, honest words I never found courage for. If I had spoken, would you have stayed? I would have held you longer in that doorway.
eyes turn distant, mirrors of my distance. Two quiet strangers sharing the same goodbye. We loved in silence, we left in silence. No final scene, just a fading outline. A message left unread in the night rain. We loved in silence, we left in silence. Empty doorways remember every unreturned call. Photographs shaking softly in my tired hands. Some stories end without villains or heroes. Just two shadows walking separate streets alone. I see now the calm between us was the storm. The quiet rooms were louder than any fight. Your absence became the only thing that answered. Too late I learned silence can choose for you. We loved in silence, we left in silence. No shattered glass, just coffee, cups gone cold. All fading light slipped out through quiet rooms. Your unreturned calls became my trembling breath. If I had spoken, would you have turned back? We loved in silence, we left in silence. I wait where you're gone. I say nothing still.
Dusty light on the table, fading afternoon, surrendering slow. Cold hands on the wood, tracing circles no one knows. Unreturned calls buzzing softly against the grain. Outside strangers pass by, untouched by this small break. I waited for your name to light the screen, but the silence grew heavier than anything we'd seen. Sometimes the loudest goodbyes are never heard. They hide in quiet rooms, in unfinished words. I stared at your message, couldn't make a sound. Sometimes the loudest goodbyes are never heard. I tried to recall when your laughter reached my eyes. Summer sky, that picnic where nothing felt like goodbye. Now your voice comes back like a hallway echo, fading light on the wall, everything dim slow. Your smile in my memory closes every open door. just less of us than before. Sometimes the loudest goodbyes are never heard. They fall like night rain, soaking unspoken words. I held my trembling breath, waiting for you to turn. Sometimes the loudest goodbyes are never heard. If I had spoken, would you have stayed near? If I had broken first, would you still disappear? Photographs shaking softly in these cold hands, our story ending nowhere, in air no one understands. The text on the screen was colder than any winter. 4 simple dying words, I think we're done. I watch the letters blur, ink drowning in water. Too late to answer now, every possible sentence gone. Sometimes the loudest goodbyes are never heard. They live in empty doorways and hearts that never stir. I would have held you longer through every fading light, but I waited too long. You slipped out of sight. I watched my own reflection, asking where I went wrong. Sometimes the loudest goodbyes are never heard. I carry our quiet ending like a shadow behind me. Cracked bench under a tired street lamp halo. Humid night air tastes like distant rain. My cold hands fold tighter in my lap. Your quiet absence hums louder than traffic. Every unreturned call hangs in this darkness. Fading light between us never made a sound. Sometimes the loudest goodbyes are never spoken. Your silence rings clearer than any goodbye. I waited where your laughter used to live. Sometimes the loudest goodbyes are never spoken. Replay small smiles thinning into strangers' faces. Touch turned to distance in slow trembling breaths. No slammed doors, just empty doorways at dusk. You drifted out like night rain from windows. I watched our photographs shaking in my hands. A home movie burning out in quiet frames. Sometimes the loudest goodbyes are never spoken. Your silence writes endings across my skin.
I waited in the rooms you left weightless. Sometimes the loudest goodbyes are never spoken. Parked outside the place where we first started. Your message glowed colder than the rain. I think it's better this way, stayed unanswered. If I had spoken, would you have turned back? The words froze halfway between my teeth. I drove away through streets dissolving into mist. No desperate call, just my name in the glass. Love didn't shatter, it just slipped out unnoticed. A song replayed too long until the meaning vanished. Sometimes the loudest goodbyes are never spoken. They sit in quiet rooms and watch the light fade. Your silence carved its shape into my breathing. I waited, you didn't come back, it's my fault. If I had spoken, I would have held you longer. Sometimes the loudest goodbyes are never spoken.
Cold hands folded on that weathered marina bench. Boats drift in the fading light, barely moving. Your name hangs quiet somewhere over the water. My trembling breath fogs a memory already leaving. We never fought, we just stopped speaking loudly. I watched our tomorrow dissolve like morning mist. We never spoke the word, but the silence said it all. Photographs shaking in my half-awake hands. I waited there, you didn't come back. Our pause record kept spinning in the dark. Stared past me towards some distant shoreline. Kitchen lights humming over two untouched cups. We traded shared dreams for weather and headlines. Every honest question built another invisible wall. If I had spoken when your eyes turned away, maybe your suitcase never touched that doorway. We never spoke the words, but the silence said it all. Night rain traced rivers down the living room glass. I waited there, you didn't come back. Our pause record kept spinning in the dark. Empty doorways glowed like open mouths saying nothing. Unreturned calls rang out in my quiet chest. Some stories end without witnesses or warnings. Just two shadows choosing different directions at dusk. Now I sit by the harbor, counting lights across the bay. Every ripple answers questions I never let myself ask. My fault lives softly, not shouting, just breathing beside me. I would have held you longer if I'd learned how to speak. We never spoke the words, but the silence said it all. Those small routines haunt these quiet rooms each morning. I waited there, you didn't come back to me. Our pause record kept spinning until the song forgot us. If I had spoken, maybe your hand stayed warm. Now I read our goodbye in every fading light. Some love just slips under the door and disappears. Night rain blurs the street outside my window. Fading light on rain, slick empty pavement. Quiet room still smells a little like you. Cold hands trace circles on the fog glass. I waited in the doorway you once filled. Trembling breath, counting all the words unsaid. You didn't come back and I stayed silent. The loudest heartbreak never makes a sound. Photograph shaking softly in my tired hands. Every unreturned call still rings inside me. We had mornings tangled in careless conversation. Coffee steam between us, hiding darker distance. Nights with unspoken hopes hanging above us. Our silence grew heavier than any shouted truth. If I had spoken, would you have stayed? I would have held you longer through that fading light. You didn't come back and I stayed silent. The loudest heartbreak never makes a sound. Unread messages glow like ghosts at midnight. Empty doorways, way where your shadow used to rest. No slammed doors, just a suitcase quietly breathing. Move like a ghost through our shared days.
Every goodbye we skipped is haunting me now. My fault lives small between each careful memory. I called your name once after you were gone. Sunset bled down the hallway while you packed in silence. The room held its breath, afraid to disturb you. The door clicks off like a secret leaving. I watched the light dim and did nothing. You didn't come back and I stayed silent. The loudest heartbreak never makes a sound. I walk our old streets counting every missed moment. Quiet rooms echo with what we never admitted. If I had spoken, maybe time would move softer. But I let you fade like distant city sirens. Some stories end in whispers we never hear coming.
Cold hands tracing droplets on the fogged up glass. Night rain blurs the city we once promised. Empty doorways watching while the daylight fades. Your unreturned calls turned into my silence. I waited in shadows where our voices used to echo, but the words stayed buried beneath my trembling breath. Sometimes the loudest goodbyes are the ones we never say. You faded like streetlights in the fading light. I held my questions like photographs shaking in darkness. Sometimes the loudest goodbyes are the ones we never say. Morning coffee ghosts, your laughter lived in the steam. Fingers used to stumble, now they just miss air. Plans postponed quietly until they disappeared completely. Our distance grew slowly like a crack in concrete. I waited for warmth in your careful distance. You waited for courage I never let surface. Sometimes the loudest goodbyes are the ones we never say. Your name turned to silence in my tired mouth. I watched the colors drain from every street corner. Sometimes the loudest goodbyes are the ones we never say. At the park edge, our carved initials stayed breathing. The tree kept our promise, though we never returned. No slammed doors, just the weight of nothing spoken.
instead of breaking apart out loud. Now I walk past our places like a careful stranger. I dodge familiar windows, afraid they might remember us. Your favorite song leaks softly through another doorway. Each note feels like distance folding in on itself. Sometimes the loudest goodbyes are the ones we never say. I trace our ending in the fog on my window. You didn't come back, I stopped reaching halfway. My fault lives softly where your shadow used to linger. I breathe out silence like a worn out second skin. Sometimes the loudest goodbyes are the ones we never say. In this quiet room, I finally let you go.